Good morning, councillors, and welcome to the first meeting of a new council. Congratulations to you all. I'd like to, unless there's any objection from councillors, take the role of chair for the first part of this meeting, being the introduction. This would normally be handed to the outgoing or the current mayor. We don't have one at this point in time. So if there's no objection from the non-elect, I'd be happy to chair the first part of this meeting. If no objection, we'll move on. As I said, the general manager, myself, will undertake the meeting in its infancy. The December ordinary meeting will be live streamed via the Zoom webinar facilities, the links provided. Recordings of the meetings or parts thereof cannot be copied, recorded, reproduced, reused, or transmitted without the prior written consent from the general manager. The meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on council's website, and persons attending the meeting should refrain from making any defamatory statements. Section 2 is council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri, Gundungurra and Durack people, and respects the history and culture of the elders, both past and present. I'd like to call upon Councillor McKechnie to undertake the prayer for this meeting.
Lord, we ask that you give us guidance in the decisions that we will make today in this term of council. We also ask that you give help and prayers to everybody who's affected by this current health crisis, and anyone that's suffering due to welfare or financial restraints caused by the current health crisis. Amen. Amen.
I'll note that everyone's in attendance with no leave of absence. It moves us into 401, which is the oath or affirmation by councillors. As part of this process, council has traditionally asked each councillor to stand, read either an affirmation or the oath, and declare that they are to do so. I see no difference in how we should do that from this point on, unless there's an objection from the council. And if not, I'll put the recommendation, or can I get a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that we undertake that process that way? Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Kip. No right nor reason. Happy to go left to right. Is everyone happy to do it that way? If they are, I'll ask Councillor Hayden to start.
I, Councillor Helen Hayden, swear that I will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interests of the people of the Oberon local government area and the Oberon Council, that I will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment.
I, Councillor Mark Callum, solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interests of the people of the Oberon local government area and the Oberon Council, and that I will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment.
I, Councillor Lauren Trevart, swear that I will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interests of the people of the Oberon local government area and the Oberon Council, and that I will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment.
I, Councillor Ian Tucker, solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interests of the people of the Oberon local government area and the Oberon Council, and that I will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment.
I, Councillor Katie Graham, solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interest of the people of the Oberon local government area and the Oberon Council, and that I will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment.
I, Clive McCarthy, swear that I will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interest of the people of Oberon local government area and the Oberon Council, and that I will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and decrees vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 and any other act to the best of my ability and judgment.
I, Councillor Bruce Watt, swear that I will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interest of the people of the Oberon local government area and the Oberon Council, and that I will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment.
I, Andrew McKibben, solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interests of the people of the Oberon local government area and the Oberon Council, and that I will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment.
I, Councillor Michael McKechnie, solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interests of the people of Oberon local government area and the Oberon Council, and that I will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment.
So I note that all council have now been either affirmed or have taken the oath of office for the incoming council election in the true and appropriate manner. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All in favour? Consider it approved. That brings us to item 402, which is the election of the mayor and deputy mayor. And there's a recommendation there that says if an election is required for the positions of mayor and deputy mayor, then the election will be held by ordinary ballot. My intention is to run through these one at a time in order to bring a mayor into the chair as soon as possible. So with that in mind, can I get a mover that we move into the election of the mayor? Councillor McKibben and Councillor McKechnie. And with that being said, I currently have one nomination for mayor, which is a true and accurate nomination. Are there any others at this point in time? If there are no others, then I declare that Councillor Mark Kellum is the Mayor of Oberon Council for the next 2 years. Congratulations. Yeah, I'm happy for you and Councillor Hayden for the time being. We can move into that spot. Congratulations. We'll now move into the election of the deputy mayor when Councillor Hayden moves first. into a position. Apologies for that, councillor. We will now move into the election for the deputy mayor. And currently I have two nominations for the role of deputy mayor. They are both true and accurate. At this point in time, I'll ask, is there any other? I have received another nomination for deputy mayor. That nomination is true and accurate, and it's for councillor Andrew McKibben. So I have three nominations for deputy mayor. Is there any other? If not, councillors, because there is now an election, there is a process whereby council needs to resolve whether they want to undertake this election via open or closed method. I need to move it for one or the other.
I'll move that we do it by closed. Done that in the past.
I have a mover and a seconder for closed. All in favour? We will move into closed. So councillors, if you can give me.
If I could, General Manager, I'd like to withdraw my nomination.
You are entirely within your right to remove your nomination, councillor, if you would like to do that.
Yes, please.
That will then leave an election for two councillors, which is a little bit easier to undertake, but still by a closed method. I would suspect that if I send out a pad, or if each of the councillors have a writing pad in front of them, that they simply put on that either councillor Trembath or councillor McKibben. I'll fold the nomination and I'll ask Sharon to collect them. So it's with the count being undertaken, I can declare that councillor Andrew McKibben has been elected as deputy mayor for Oberon Council for the next 2 years. Congratulations to both councillors for their election. I would like to now put that councillors endorse councillor Kellam and councillor McKibben as the mayor and deputy mayor for the next 2 years of the Oberon government term. All in favour? All against? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors, for your time, and I'll pass on now to the new mayor to undertake the rest of the council meeting.
Thank you, General Manager. Before we get on with business, I'd just like to thank everyone for their confidence in me and electing me mayor. And I'd also like to acknowledge the work of the previous council and their good stewardship throughout a very tough 4 years where we had fires, floods, droughts, pandemics, and also managing a massive amount of new infrastructure. So well done to the old council. I'll also acknowledge the fine leadership and dedication to our community of our former Mayor, Kathy Sadowitz. And despite her small feat, I think I'll have some pretty big shoes to fill. Thank you. Now, any declarations of interest? None? No presentations. No presentations. Public gallery is open to members of the community in accordance with the requirements under public health orders. Any questions from the public will be able to be asked in person, and the community is to be given the opportunity to ask questions at the commencement of the council meeting, and the mayor is to ask for questions from the gallery prior to commencement of the ordinary meeting. Members of the public wishing to address council are permitted to do so, provided the guidelines are adhered to. The person asking a question at the council meeting must clearly state their name and in what capacity they are acting. If the person asking the questions is acting as another person or organisation's agent, then they must advise council if they have their prior consent and authority. Questions from the public is not an opportunity for debate with elected representatives or staff. It is an opportunity for the community to ask questions in relation to an issue or put a point of view relating to an issue that may be causing interest or concern. Due to the time constraints, a time frame of 3 minutes per speaker is allocated. All questions and comments must be directed through the mayor, and in the instance of a question, if it cannot be answered, it will be taken on notice and a response will be given within a reasonable period of time. This is the only opportunity for the community to address at council during an ordinary meeting. Are there any questions? No questions? All right. Confirmation of minutes. Attachments attached to the ordinary meeting minutes for the 16th of November 2021. Do I have a mover? Councillor McKibben and Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased to be able to propose that the full minutes be accepted by the council. I note that a number of councillors weren't present for that meeting, so it's really, I suppose it's really a matter for those existing councillors to make that judgment.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, they appear to be a true and accurate recording of the meeting. No problem with seconding the motion.
All right, put the recommendation. All in favour? Unanimous. All right. Item 0901, the mayoral minute and report. The recommendation is that the report item 0901 is received as information. Councillor McKibben. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just make the only observation I would make is about 2/3 down page 11, 2nd of December, where there's a reference to a meeting with Mick English, who's the Vice President of the Golf Club, and Katie Graham, who's the women's captain. The word Graham is spelled incorrectly, and as Katie is now the councillor, I think it should be corrected, Graham.
Thank you.
Noted.
We must get these things correct. I'm very happy to move that this recommendation be accepted.
Councillor McKenzie.
Nothing to add.
All right. And putting a recommendation. All in favour? None against. Unanimous. There are no notice of motions. Councillor and delegates report. The recommendation is, this is the Oberon Arts Council, the recommendation is that the report item 1101 is received as information. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor McKibben. Councillor Graham. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. Apologies, I nearly slipped.
I was waiting for it.
There may be a couple of those. I'm sure some of us in the previous council term will make that on occasion. So please don't think that you changed sex or anything. Look, I'm very happy. It was a very active meeting. I note that one of our councillors who gave apology on that occasion is an active member of the Arts Council at least, and I think that's a great attribute for this council to have you on the Arts Council. I'm very happy to recommend this report.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Certainly recommend it.
I'll put the recommendation. All in favour? Against? That's unanimous. There's no committee reports. We have one report for decision, which is 1301, which is the Oberon LGA election result, meeting schedule and council committees. And I would like to add a fifth recommendation, and that is that councillors note requirements for the hit the ground running training and schedule, which is attached to the minutes. Sorry, which is attached to the budget. So the recommendation is now in 5 parts. The ordinary meetings of council will be held on the 3rd Tuesday of each month, commencing at 5 p.m, with the exception of January, when no meeting is held. Council confirm its appointment and chair of the Section 355 committees and make appointments to other council committees, community committees and working parties for a period of 2 years. Council advertise for members of the community to participate as delegates in the Section 355 committees. That if a councillor vacancy occurs in the first 18 months after the election, the vacancy will be filled using a countback of votes at the last ordinary election. And 5 is councillors note requirements for the hit the ground running training and schedule. We'll have a mover and a second. Councillor Chimbarth and Councillor. All right. Sorry, just a second. Just a second. So, Councillor Chimbarth. All right. These recommendations are to a large degree simple procedural. We are the general managers recommend we should move the start time of council meetings from 5:30 to 5, and that may be discussed as we go along. Confirming the appointments of the chair of Section 355 committees and appointment of other council committees is a routine process. We will go through each committee in order as they appear in this business paper, and people who wish to nominate may do so. And if there are more nominees than actual places within that committee, we will go to a vote process. This gives us the authority to advertise for members of the community to participate as delegates in the Section 355 committees, and that's quite important. It's a big part of our community engagement is to have good community members on the 355 committees. The 4th one is a new recommendation that hasn't appeared before, and that of course is due to the change voting processes, where if a councillor council vacancy occurs in the first 18 months, there will be a countback of the current election, the December 4th election results to fill that vacancy rather than have a by-election, which is quite an expensive process. And the last one, which I put in there, is simply because we have a section there about councillor training, and it is important and it is mandatory, or parts of it are mandatory. Councillor McCarthy?
If it's mandatory, why is it needed to be included?
I put it in there for people to note and make people more aware of it.
I'm not sure. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if the second was going to speak first in favour of that.
No.
No.
I'm in favour.
I'll think about it, the proposed amendment in a minute, but I appreciate the issue about staff times and the 5 o'clock meeting. However, as a council, we also have to be mindful that we want a broad section of people on the council, and people have work commitments and other commitments as well. From a personal perspective, 5:30 would suit me personally better. I'm sure there are probably some other members who are sitting here who may have a similar view. I realise that we have to balance staff time as against councillors' availabilities and infringing on also councillors' time as well as our staff. I would personally like to hear the views of other councillors generally on, in particular, recommendation 1, to get a broad sense of what people's feeling is before I look at proposing or potentially proposing an amendment. If that's a fair enough statement.
If councillors are happy, I will go around from left to right and get a view of people's views. Councillor Hayden.
I'd like to see meetings start around 6 p.m.
Councillor Trevor.
I agree with the earlier start, 5. It's only once a month. It's a commitment to the staff who work here as well, and just making ourselves available from time to time to fit in with that schedule.
Councillor Tucker.
I would suggest a start time of about 7 p.m. with a meal prior to the meeting. I think there's a couple of advantages to that. It gives a bit of extra time for people who are either working or living a fair way from town to get there in time for the meeting, even if they're not here in time for the start of the meal at 6. It also gives extra time for members of the public who might be working and who want to attend to get home, get changed, have a meal, whatever, before coming to the meeting. And it also would give time during the meal for either councillors among themselves or councillors with staff to have discussions about things that are coming up on the agenda, or to ask questions of senior staff. So possibly get some of those questions answered prior to the meeting. And also it would give those staff, as the General Manager pointed out, there are, it's a long day for senior staff who then have to attend the meeting, and it would provide a meal break prior to going into the council meeting. So, you know, the times could perhaps be negotiated somewhat, but I'm happy to either move an amendment now or see what others say first. Suggest a meal at about 6 and the meeting starting at about 7.
Let's wait till we hear everyone else and any amendments have been proposed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Graham.
Personally, I don't really mind what time it is, but I can see there's a bit of a move for a later. I think maybe one solution for the staff would be to start it later that day, so they don't have such a long day.
Councillor McCarthy.
I'm impartial at any time. I think it's just got to be here and represent the community, so it doesn't worry me the time.
Councillor Watt.
5 or 5:30 is, I'd have a preference for 5:30. Same reasons that Andrew's mentioned, I'll work as well.
You know my preference.
No, your preference. Councillor Pittman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a preference for 5:30. The issues with the staff being here later on a meeting night, but I think it's probably easier to work around that than it is to accommodate some of the councillors that have got to travel and have irregular work commitments. So I'll be happy with the status quo of 5:30.
One of the things that I noticed in some of our meetings in the last term was that when we were going through till after 10 o'clock, people started making very bad decisions. People got disengaged from the actual process, and tired people do not make good decisions. I intend to institute breaks during the proceedings at an appropriate time. I think 2 hours of hard concentration at any one time is enough. And then you have a short break just to get up and walk around. And I've noticed that on a number of times that when we've had that, councillors come back refreshed and reinvigorated to a remarkable degree, considering the small break they've had. So I'm happy to stick with 5:30 or 5. I'm frankly am quite agnostic about either of those. But I will institute breaks. And although they won't be exactly 2 hours, they will be somewhere as close as I can make it to that, depending on what the agenda is giving us. So what does that come down to at the moment, there, General Manager?
You make it difficult, Mr. Mayor, given the fact that you moved the original,
Well, I did, but
the original recommendation. It seems that there is a move towards a later time than 5 p.m. There is a number of people that have said 5:30. There's some that said 6 and one that said 7. Ultimately, you have a recommendation that you have put in place. If you want to, through you and the seconder, propose a minor amendment to 5:30 rather than looking at an amendment from another councillor, that would be up to the mover and the seconder. However, at this point in time, excuse me, you have a recommendation that has a mover and a seconder. It needs to be debated in that way, unless, of course, you want to do a minor change to that initial point 1. And then once that has been made, you will then debate that minor amendment and come up with a resolution from there. So it's entirely up to you. If you want to go with the original recommendation that you've made, it's up to council then to deliberate on that. If you want to make a minor amendment based on the conversation that you just had, it's entirely up to you as the mover and Councillor Trimbath as the seconder.
I would go for 5:30 then.
I'll second.
So given that you've both now concurred with a minor amendment to that original, you have a new recommendation there that says it's 5:30. Currently now it's with you, Mr. Mayor, to facilitate that conversation.
That's the amendment on the table for 5:30. We've had a mover and a seconder. Councillor McGibbon.
I'd like to speak in favour if I could, Mr. Mayor, but I'd also probably just like to deal with an issue Councillor Tucker raised. I can see why the suggestions made. I actually feel that a meal and a get-together at the end of the council meeting is quite important for the fact that we can have some interesting conversations here in the council chamber. It's very important that when we leave this building, we are a unified group of councillors. And it gives us the opportunity to have a meal, maybe a glass of wine together, and to have a chat, and to make us feel that we are unified. I think that's very important at the end of the meeting. Now, some of us don't have the opportunity always to stay for that. I note that a number of councils around us do not do that and have had quite a disparate group of councillors. It is very important in us going forward that we are a unified. We have a diversity of talents in this chamber, if I can say. We have a lot of strengths, we have different competencies, but together we have to govern for this community. And I think one of the opportunities is once we've had the council meeting, we've had the discussions, we get together, we meet, and if it's like in the religious term, break bread together. But I think that's important. So that's why I think it's important we do have the meal at the end, because there can be some tough discussions, as you will appreciate, in the council chamber and the council meetings. But together we want to leave this chamber as a unified group. We've had our discussions here. We may not agree with each other, obviously, on issues. But at the end, it's very important that we leave unified. And there's, Very, very important. So that's why I pushed for the meal. Yeah, no, it's not actually addressing the 5:30, but it's an issue that was raised by Councillor Tucker, and I just wanted to address it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, noting that the views as we went around the table, it's clear that there's not a lot of point in moving an amendment as I suggested. So yeah, I suggest we go ahead with the amendment as it currently stands.
Sorry, got a vote. Is anyone against that proposed amendment? All right, I'll put the motion in 5 parts. All in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Now, the next part of this is the section 355 committees. And we'll start with the Community Service Committee. This is actually a very important committee. It drives solutions for a lot of community concerns, and it can be a powerhouse of solutions for things such as aged care and patient transport and a variety of other issues. And I call for people to nominate for that committee. Councillor Graham.
Excuse me, Mr. Wood, how many do you require for community services?
There's a chair and one other normally.
Yeah, but
Is this the community service one we're
This is
doing?
community services. So Councillor Graham and Councillor Watt. And just so people realise, the deputy mayor and mayor can attend any of these meetings as they see fit.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
I just wonder if we could get a quick explanation of what section 355 actually means. It's something I've never really quite clear about.
You're probably the best person.
Through the mayor, the section 355 committee is a committee that is delegated a function by council to undertake a certain a unique service or a unique provision that sits part of local government's wide range of services it provides. The 355 are a group that make recommendations to council for consideration at a formal council meeting. They are unique attributes breaking down what council would do normally into that function in which councillors can have councillors that have an interest in those sections to participate in. It's also another way for them to interact with community, because we invite community members to sit on that 355 where they can debate and make recommendations around the terms of reference that they develop.
Okay, so Councillor Watt and Councillor Graham.
Yep.
Are nominated for the Community Service Committee. The Hazel Grove Public School Reserve. Councillor McCarthy, you're the current incumbent, correct?
Yep.
You'd like to nominate for that? How many do we need for that one? Just one or two?
Traditionally, we've only had one, Mr. Mayor.
Well, how about one and an alternate then?
It'll be up to each of the individuals.
Happy with that?
I'll step aside.
You'll step aside?
Yep.
Okay.
And there's usually, sorry, Mr. Mayor, there's usually two members from the general public out there.
Yep.
One being Kenny Fitzpatrick, the fire captain.
Yep.
As the grounds where the fire station is, and the other one was a community member, the Hazel Grove, Graham Whittaker.
All right. Well, we'll be writing to those people and inviting them to resubmit their membership. Okay, congratulations, Councillor Hayden. The Heritage Committee. Currently, it's
Myself as chair and
Yep.
councillor Dunn.
And I'd like to nominate for that.
So you're renominating, Clive?
I'll nominate as chair if everyone's happy, yeah.
Yep.
Or whether we've got to nominate then.
And we've got one from councillor Trimbath and one from councillor Hayden. How many were it? Just two plus one?
And generally have two and an alternate.
All right, so the order of nomination was councillor McCarthy, councillor Trimbath, and the alternate is councillor Hayden. All right. Over on sports facilities. You'll put your hand up, councillor Trimbath?
Yes.
Councillor McCarthy?
Yeah, I'll put my hand, I'll go back on that. That's if no one else is.
Councillor McCarthy?
Happy to defer to councillor McCarthy.
I honestly thought there was more than just two originally. Prior to this last council, and why I support more on it is, as you know, sometimes they've come along and haven't had a quorum, so I'd like the council here to consider that you allow councillor McKechnie and myself on.
I see this particular 355 committee becoming more important over the next term of council, over this term of council. And I'm very happy to have yourself and Clive and councillor Trimbath and councillor McKechnie as the alternate.
Just through the chair, this is council's opportunity to nominate whoever they want on these committees. If you want more than two people, the previous is just a guide. The previous is just a guide to say how these committees were established and how they work. So if council want to nominate more members on those committees, it's entirely up to council to do so.
I think the importance that this is going to play in this term of council probably means there's no reason we shouldn't have three members on it. Because this is going to be, as you know, crucial to some of our future planning, and we need direction from this committee in a number of areas. So it very well may be that one councillor obviously can't attend, and but rather than have an alternative, there's no reason we could have three of them. Just for this, I'm not suggesting this across the board, but this committee is important for this term.
Is there agreement on that? Is there all agreement? All right. It will be councillor McCarthy, councillor Trimbath, and councillor McKechnie. Now, Black Springs Community Hall, there is a council liaison there. Anyone else?
I can put myself up as an alternative to be there on occasion as needed. I think I'm usually there. Yeah.
Councillor Hayden is the council representative for the Black Springs Community Hall with an alternate of councillor McKibben.
And I'll try and get there when I can. Yes.
Okay.
It does need some direction in this. Thanks.
All right, the Audit, Improvement and Risk Committee, the mayor is automatically a member of that. And the deputy mayor is well, last term that was the mayor and deputy mayor. But I'm sure there's other people who are interested in audit and risk committees.
So you,
Councillor Graham and Councillor Tucker. Did you put your hand up as well?
I did put my hand up, yeah. But I'm quite happy to be.
Through the chair, under the current terms of reference with the ARIC, you have two, and they're normally the mayor and the deputy mayor, so you don't really have to nominate
Yes.
Mr. Deputy Mayor. It's whether the deputy mayor wants to allow another council to sit on it, but traditionally it's the mayor and the deputy mayor.
I'm happy for an alternate.
No. Well, Councillor Tucker, I think, because you need to give, you haven't been put on any committee yet, so.
No, well,
And you'll be the alternate.
willing to withdraw, or I'm willing to be an alternate, or I'm willing to be.
It'll be an alternate, and there will be times when two people can't go, and we will
Certainly call on your services.
But sometimes you can go to sleep in those meetings. All right, the Finance Committee is it's a whole of council committee. The the finance committee meetings are twice yearly, correct?
That's correct.
And they are whole of council, so they have the same processes as an ordinary council meeting. So everyone is familiar with that.
They also have the same delegation.
And it has the same delegations, yes. So that's everyone's on that one. The Performance Review Committee. The recommendation here is that council establish a performance review panel consistent with the Office of Local Government guidelines. And that would be the mayor, the deputy mayor, a councillor nominated by council and a councillor nominated by the general manager, together with an external facilitator. Now, previously, council has had a whole of council performance review process, which at times has been unwieldy, other times it's worked. But the last one we had, I think on the day of the race, there was only 4 councillors here, but we took inputs from all councillors who wish to make input, and that seemed to work quite satisfactorily. Councillor McKechnie.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I strongly believe that all councillors should be part of the Performance Review Committee. I see no reason to change it from the previous few years. I think it works quite well. I think everybody's elected to have their input into it, and I think the ratepayers should be able to see that the people that they've elected, that this is a topic that a hot topic during the election, and I think that the ratepayers should just be able to see that the people that they are elected have an input into the performance review.
Councillor Tucker.
I'm not sure if that was a motion, but if it was, I'll second.
Well, this is a discussion about.
No, it's just a comment.
This is a discussion about how we will continue to do this. It's
Okay,
within the previous
I
motion.
would support Councillor McKechnie's comments and view.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would support it, the proposal by councillors McKechnie and Tucker. And then if it does appear it's becoming unwieldy, that we review the situation, as we have the right to do it anytime anyway. I realise that, as you have said, sometimes it becomes a bit unwieldy, but I think that the last few performance reviews have actually worked quite well. So I'm happy with it, and I do believe that as councillors, as Councillor McKechnie has so aptly put, that we have a commitment to our community to ensure that from the management right through, that the council is working to the best of it can, and that's through the performance review. Because our communication is through the general manager.
Anyone else got a comment to make?
No, that sounds great.
Okay, well, we'll go with whole of council. The Traffic Advisory Local Committee, the TALC. It's a statutory committee which includes 2 councillor delegates and an alternate delegate, as well as a representative from Transport for New South Wales and a community delegate who represents the Honourable Paul Toole, MP. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if the general manager received an email I sent a couple of days ago. I don't think the information provided there is correct. I could stand corrected. My understanding, certainly the way it worked for many years, and from what I've been able to find online, I think it's still the case, that it's not actually a council committee as such. It comes under the delegation from Roads and Transport for the implementation of traffic control devices. And the membership is one voting delegate from council, one from the police, one from RMS, and the local members representative. So traditionally what this council has done is nominate one councillor to be the voting delegate and an alternate councillor for any time that the primary councillor is unable to attend. Can I ask if the general manager has seen that email? I have had email problems recently, so it may not have gone through. But that's my understanding, and if that is the case, I would like to nominate myself to be the primary delegate.
So through the chair, firstly, yes, I did receive your email and my email bounced back, so I don't know whether there is an issue with your email or my email, doesn't it? Councillor Tucker is, I'll say 80% correct. The thing missing in this document is the police representative on the document. Council has traditionally been able to supply 2 members and an alternate to our local traffic committee. One is the official member who votes, but we have been able to have 2 members. It has always been a decision of this council as to how they want to go about supplying those, and if council is comfortable going back to 1 member, then that's fine, and having an alternate. But the way our local traffic committee has worked, there's been quite a level of support from all agencies, including transport, to have that second person on and as part of the discussion for matters that relate to local roads. In terms of it being a committee of council, is that the local traffic committee does not make decisions. They make recommendations to council to make decisions, which is why council has previously and will continue to see it as a function of the whole of council, which makes it a council committee, which is why we deal with it that way. The delegation is under the Roads Act. So it's an external point that is it a statutory committee or not, is one that we deal with as a council committee on the basis that any recommendations that you make will be determined by the council elect.
Also, we chair it.
We also chair it. Yeah, but
Okay, do we have an alternate? Councillor Carter?
Not alternate, is it?
It's not alternate. I think we've decided it's the
If
second
you
member.
want to,
Well, it's down as an alternate in terms of voting, but the reality is that there's 2 members there, they both get a say.
Gary just said.
traditionally,
Mr.
TALC
Mayor.
has allowed 2 members of council to sit on this committee. The delegation sits as 1, so council generally would be uniform in how they approach a conversation with the traffic committee in this instance. It'd be very uncommon to have 2 councillors sit on the traffic committee with alternate views as to a recommendation to that committee.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor, also bearing in mind that regardless of if the 2 delegates agree or disagree, it comes back to council and any councillor can raise concerns at that time.
Exactly.
It appears we're all in violent agreement.
Yes. All right, the next, so we're happy with that with Councillor Tucker and McCarthy. The Works Committee is the next one, and the Works Committee, like the Finance Committee, is a whole of council committee, so you're all going to be there. And again, that's 2 meetings a year. Other committees and working parties, the Australia Day Working Party. The Mayor's automatically a member of the working party, and any other councillor can nominate.
Excuse me, I asked the general manager this email, do we have any other current councillors who are actually on that committee? Katie, you on? No. I was just asking because I think it'd be, if there are, it'd be good to know for these committees.
Through the
Yeah, I
chair,
mean, you're obviously on it.
Well, I was.
the rationale behind the mayor being an automatic delegate is that the Australia Day is vastly becoming one of the largest civic events that council runs. And as it is that, the mayor is delegated that function as the chair. There's more capacity for any councillor if they want to sit on that working party to do so. And it's up to council to make that decision.
Councillor McCarthy, you want to sit on
No, I just, no, I don't. Let the Australian Working Day Party go. I just want to make a recommendation in these community working parties, that's all.
Yep.
I'd like to see a new party set up. Is a new working party for the sports complex. So I think we need to see a vote whether we have that as a separate item, whether you want the board of council. But I think this sporting complex is so important, whether you want it all the council or whatever, but I'd like to see another committee formed that we have a new.
I don't have an objection to that, but maybe we should handle it at the end of the committee. I think like the Oberon sewer project committee, it's of a similar nature.
I think that Councillor McCarthy is absolutely right.
Yeah.
We need to have a specific working party for that project. I think we need to have a bit more clarity about things like finance and what is actually possible. As soon as we have that, we can start putting it together. But I think once we get some clarity on the options that are available, that's when we can start actually having a productive working group.
Just to move along, the establishment of working party, these are the current ones that we have that we're moving towards, or there is recommendations on our status report that require a continuation of these. There is nothing to stop council at any time wanting to create a working party. It's not, if you don't put it here, you can't have it. Maybe a suggestion is a report back to the February meeting, whether in open or confidential, about how that is progressing and what the nature of that is. It's entirely up to council once again. But because you don't establish a working party here does not preclude you establishing one further into the future.
Maybe we could at the end just put a note that it's intended to form that.
That is probably where I was going with my commentary.
I think it's an excellent idea.
No, I agree. So on the the Australia Working Party is at the moment Councillor Trimbath. Anyone else? We need and Councillor Trimbath. And I'll ask the General Manager to explain the Cemetery Headstone Maintenance Committee, what it does and how it does it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's also a challenge for me to say Mr. Mayor rather than Madam Mayor, but forgive me, please. The Cemetery Headstone Maintenance Committee has been one which has been established for quite some time. There is a budget around that committee, and there are two local members who are actively going around all our known our cemeteries, both owned and on private land, trying to establish who and what they are. This is a huge project, and the two members contribute their time voluntarily. The committee in itself is one which still requires quite a bit of work to be done in order to finalise the naming of people that aren't named and trying to find out where things are. And they are a very active group in that space.
I would like to nominate for that. That's what I do in my spare time.
That's all right. Anything else?
I have a lot of both matters.
One's enough, no?
You were already on it.
All right, so it's Mayor and Councillor Hayden. Independent living units, tenants panel. The current incumbent, sorry, the previous incumbent was Councillor McCarthy.
I was the alternative.
And you were the alternate. You wish to nominate again?
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Anyone else?
there any need for an alternate or in respect to can't it be the two councils?
I have no problem. That's fine. Councillor McCarthy and Councillor McKechnie, you're the delegates.
And I think in terms of reference to this, which I think was quite good last time, but good, Mr. Mayor, was that issues with the independent living units were raised by these two representatives that the rest of us as councillors may not see.
Yeah.
I think that should continue as part of the terms of reference or ambit of the committee.
The Oberon Youth Council. We have a youth mayor and deputy mayor, and they discuss issues affecting the youth within the Oberon LGA. This current youth council is particularly active and some very, very fine young people involved, and have actually caused us to spend some money on various things to improve safety in particular areas. So they have a good community conscience. I'd like to have nominations for that. Councillor Graham and Councillor Trenbath. All right. The Common Working Party was established to develop the master plan for the Oberon Common. It consists of all councils at the moment. The master plan was endorsed by council during 2021. The list of priorities developed. It is proposed to continue the work party. However, the general manager recommends a reduced number of councillors. So we'll just discuss that to start with.
The commentary is that council has developed their draft plan and we're working towards implementing, council has developed their master plan, which is now working towards whether all councils need to be on that implementation program is just something for council to consider. We are all working towards a standard that we've endorsed. So really now it's a matter of whether all councils want to continue to be on that or whether a reduced number is a more efficient way of dealing with things. It's in the hands of council.
Mr. Mayor, I think all councils should stay on it. And if you're not interested, you don't turn up, which is happening at the moment.
Any other comment?
And I think one of the reasons why people lose interest is getting it actioned. Sorry, but I really feel that we've got to change the action of this Common Work Party and what they've resolved.
And through the chair, the whole council nominated resolves that.
No, I mean, once council decide an action, if you go back through the minutes, some of them lead into last financial year. That action, it needs to change. I'm sorry that you might disagree with me, Gary, but general manager, but yeah.
All right, so let's leave this as the whole of council working party.
Yep.
And people will self-nominate in reality. The Lake Oberon cycle and walking track was originally set up to investigate how we would do a cycle and walking track around the lake. At the moment, it is really between the dam and the golf club, with not a lot of prospect for going further than that in the short to medium term. As it says here, it meets on an as-needs basis, and I consulted with the previous chair a few days ago, and it hasn't met for about 2 years.
Through the chair, that's not exactly correct. The Oberon cycle and walkway is a priority which council laws in the last term indicated that they'd like to see developed as a way of providing an alternate tourist footpath type embellishment to the Oberon local government area. A number of obstacles exist in that space, so it is a very slow moving beast, and one of those things is undertaking a feasibility study for how, in fact, or whether there is enough money in all of New South Wales to be able to do such a thing. So look, it is one of those things that has been to be honest, there's been limited funding for that type of activity to start with. there are obstacles within that, being that the differences between who owns the dam and to what level, and private landowners and the encumbrances on that, which are still yet to be worked through. But the reason why the committee has not met is purely on the basis that there are a lot of other things that we are doing which have sought funding or have funding, and having that feasibility study. Unfortunately, there's not too many grant opportunities out there for feasibility study. So it's trying to do these types of things on a ad hoc basis. So the committee is still there. The resolution of council to pursue opportunities in this space, there is no direct resolution from council to pursue a walking path around the common. And the first part is to have a look, and that process is creating some sort of feasibility study as to what is the real cost of something like that should council resolve to do something. So that's where it sits, and that's why it's a working party. Traditionally, it's had the mayor and another councillor that sat on it, and it's entirely up to council whether they want to sit on it or they want to progress it or they don't want to look at it. I would suggest that until you've in fact had a better understanding than my 2-minute diatribe on what that means, that someone sitting on it and we review it at some time in the future would be possibly the best way to do it.
All right, well, I'll nominate myself for that. My other councillor.
Through Mr. Mayor, could the statement of the working party be changed that it only becomes a working party to facilitate a path occupied by the common of the golf club at the moment? In other words, forget the rest of the ground. It was the biggest obstacle is the tenure, the way that the dam was taken up. And if you take it up, as you see with the Heritage Rail Trail, you'll be required to put fences up which precludes stock getting to the water. So why don't we be realistic and see if we just can't start the walking track or whatever to facilitate down on the golf club reserve first. And if it leads to something else in the future, maybe, yeah, but if you want to set up this working party, why not just do the restrict it to the reserve and take the rest of the land out of it for now?
Without going back through too much, is that the way the working party established was exactly that way, to deal with what you've known and what you own at this point in time, and then look at staging it. But once again, there's been no commitment made because we don't have a feasibility study as to how or who that would there would be some encumbrance by.
I think we'll
So
just,
those things are there.
we'll just keep I'll keep myself on there, and I'd like one other councillor, and as we get some opportunity to take this forward, we will do so.
Could I suggest, mate, if Councillor McCarthy's got the time, maybe he should be on, because he knows that what he's talking,
Okay.
I mean, it's hardly ever meets, but you've got the concept in your mind and know what's achievable from what you've said, so probably you're the logical other person.
All right. The Oberon sewer project. For the new councillors, this has been a long process which got bogged down in some serious bureaucracy in state government, which drove us batty. We have, in the last 12 months, made considerable headway once the bureaucratic issues were resolved. It's important. It is key infrastructure in Oberon. It's actually more important than the water, because water will last a while, but if your sewage system breaks down, you're in almost immediate trouble. It is still working okay, but it won't continue working for more than another 7 or 8 years. And so we're replacing that, and hopefully we will get to the point where we can start work on it. I mean, physical work on it in the first half of next year. Previously, the working party was Councillor McKibben, Councillor McKechnie, Councillor McCarthy, and myself. So and we worked reasonably well together. I'd like nominations for this particular group.
I would be, because of the importance of this project and as it's had considerable history, and there's a considerable amount of knowledge to know about the past to get to where we are in the future, I'd certainly, in this instance, council's recommended the existing subcommittee stand as it is because of that knowledge and because we're at a crucial point, really.
I'm happy with that. I'd also like to
If
put
anyone else,
at least one.
one new councillor.
councillor.
Councillor Tucker? I
Yeah,
think that'd be
good.
good, yes.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So it'll be Councillor McKibben, Councillor Tucker, McKechnie, McCarthy, and Collins. And the Oberon Scape Working Party, which I think was your bailiwick, Councillor McKibben.
Yes, I was on this. The only thing I'd make at the minute is we have had a report issued to former council and the new councillors. I think it's at this stage, not preempting the February meeting. It's very important that as a whole, because this is Oberon's future appearance, that we are all probably involved in it. At this stage, if we then want to go back to a subcommittee of two, maybe that's appropriate. But I do think at least in the immediate future, because of we actually going to be changing and planning the future of the appearance of this town, that it is important that we are all involved at this stage. So maybe I'm suggesting the whole of council at this stage, we want to cut it back to 2 or 3 or 4. I agree, but because the report's now been issued for us to review, yeah, that's fine.
I agree with you. It's one of those things that I think all the new councillors need to come to terms with and understand what's happened. And that best way of doing that is having the whole council there for that, at least that initial February meeting. And after that, we can decide whether how to make better use of some other people's time and have a smaller group.
So just to give some clarity around that, in the new year, councillors will be involved in a councillor engagement session with the current draft to get an overview, to give the new councillors a little bit more understanding on where we've headed and where we've come from. So that will give some additional opportunity for those councillors to get up to date on that.
And just off the thing, it is a comprehensive report, needs to be read by everyone. I've already made some notes. I'm sure every council will. When we go to that engagement session, because I think it's pre the next meeting.
Yep.
We need to have some views and bring your ideas, because not everything that's said is necessarily correct.
That's it.
That means we move forward. Yep. So you just endorse your community, just nominate which. Do the 2 questions first. Endorse that. You just need to endorse the community. Talk first.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor, if I could. Page 22, 23, that's the attachment to, is it this one? Or is it in the wrong place? But anyway, is this these are the training sessions? Which ones of these are compulsory?
Through the chair, councillors have an obligation to undertake training. Right? There is no compulsory training per se. As part of your role as a councillor, you will note that you have to continue to provide ongoing professional development in relation to being a new councillor. These are the opportunity for you to self-educate and get those additional points that you require as a councillor. So it's up to you as a councillor to go down this path. Council itself will be also being provided with a number of training opportunities. To hit the ground running is training, a list of training opportunities for councillors who want to, in fact, progress and provide themselves personal. There is no mandatory, you must go to this one.
Can I make a,
Induction.
Yes.
That's important.
which is the induction one?
I mean, well, it's all induction,
Right.
but you'll go through a number of induction processes as part of that. Like council had one last week.
Yeah, it's all right. Okay.
So it's just the induction of becoming a councillor, how you form yourself, how you go through a council meeting, what your role is, all these types of things.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, make an observation. One of the areas I found particularly hard in the last council term, and I still find particularly hard, is planning. And the local and regional strategic planning, how it all fits together. So I think the Saturday, the 2nd of April, because of what we're going to be doing in this term, is very important, but I don't know if that's sufficient for us all to get up to speed, because I still find it highly confusing, directed planning, and I'm sure new councillors are going to find it even more baffling and confusing. So I don't know. I really think we're going to have to, what we do in that space is going to be very important.
So through the chair, as part of the proposed program of training works, a very important date the council should put in their diaries is the 27th of January. It is when we're going to have a session with an external agency that will give you the opportunity to go through these things. The induction processes that this facilitator provides for is excellent, and it gives an opportunity to not talk to me, to talk to an independent about whether what I'm telling you is correct or what you think is correct. So that is a huge opportunity. Planning is one of those things that is, I agree, very difficult to get a grasp on, and we'll be concentrating as a council on a continued program of professional development in space because of the amount that we're going to go through in the next 3 years.
Thank you. Councillor Cover.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel that this new sporting complex working party should be added as the next box form at this time in the meeting. Whether you derive who's going to be on it at a later stage, but I don't want to see it forgotten. I don't know when we're dealing with general business. At a normal meeting, there's no general business. So how you get it re-slotted in, I don't know. So I'd like to see that added now while we're dealing with these committees and working parties.
Well, at the moment, it would be a working party with no terms of reference or structure or
That's right.
members.
But what I'm getting at is when you do your general business, you get the report from the general manager. There is no general business available for the council. So this should be slotted in now. And I just feel that later on it's going to be forgotten.
Well, I won't forget it because I'm going to tell the general manager now that we need to have this brought up at the February meeting with a proposal for the scope and structure and terms of reference of that particular working group.
Okay, all right, I'm fine with that, but I just feel that we don't want it forgotten.
I'm not going to forget it.
That have been aired from this get forgotten. I'm sorry, but
If Councillor McCarthy's worried, we could put boxes there and say terms of reference are defined at the February 2022 meeting.
that's exactly what we need.
Terms of reference and if there's a concern.
And just for consistency, the way that this complex has been developed is purely under the delegations that were provided by council. Hasn't been done anything outside that scope. So once we have that authority that allows us to extend that, I've got no problem in providing it, which is why I have no problem with the establishment of a working party. Noted it as well.
So we're now done.
Yeah, but I would go back now.
We have to move the recommendation.
Yeah, and you now have formed your your time. You've appointed your chair and you just want to cut the resolution as to all these parts thereof. You need your own part. When you originally was reading 5 parts, so you just need to move the basis there.
So you need all 5 parts, no?
You need to move all 5 parts. The first part you did was purely to adjust that from 5 to 5:30. So you move all 5 parts. Over inclusions and committees, someone to as required.
I'm putting the recommendation, in 5 parts, including the minor amendment to the time of 5:30. Mover, Councillor McKibben, seconder. Councillor McKibben. Councillor McKibben.
Yeah, I'm very happy that we've agreed on all the relevant meeting section 355 committees and council committees, including committees and working parties. So the next council term.
No, I think we've covered it fairly comprehensively.
I'll just clarify something, sorry. Councillors, you already had a mover, being yourself and Councillor Trimbath.
Yeah.
The first recommendation that you made was, in fact, to endorse the 5:30 time.
Yes.
It was moved, like it was endorsed by both the mover and the seconder. You have now committed all your councillors to the different committees and working parties that we have. It hasn't changed the original motion put forward by the Mayor and Councillor Tremblay. It doesn't need a secondary motion. It is purely now a matter for council to endorse all those things together with the councillors elected to those committees.
We need
I
council.
apologise. I
He
apologise.
set this up this way, I'm sure.
No. I apologise if there's any confusion, but ultimately, Sharon will take me at the back and throttle me if she then turns and says, "You have 4 people moving a motion and seconding it when you only need 2." So for the purposes of appropriateness, it would simply be a matter of resolving what the Mayor and Councillor Trenbarth have recommended in the first instance, noting that councillors have endorsement of all the committees and working parties. Does that make sense?
So I'm now just putting the motion.
You're putting the motion.
All in favour? No. Motion's passed.
Thank you, council, because that saves me having a stand-up party with my executive coordinator now. Hopefully.
Now on to 1302, which is delegates to external organisations. The recommendations of council appoint its delegates to external organisations for 2 years. We'll use a similar process to the other the other organisations we've had.
I've made this recommendation.
Seconder. Councillor Hayden.
No, I think we don't need to talk about this. We need to now go through and appoint the relevant delegates to each of the organisations.
Okay. You happy with that? All right, Arts Out West. I think franchise is probably still a delegate.
So through the chair, my understanding is Fran is the chair of Art Out West. Given that capacity, previously she has acted as not only the chair as an independent, but the overall delegate. If council want to provide a delegate to that organisation, it will not affect Fran's tenure as the chair. We traditionally just mesh the two together because Fran is a local ratepayer, and purely, once again, up to council to make that decision on whether they want to have an external delegate in their own right, or they wouldn't want to endorse Fran in those 2 capacities.
Mr. Mayor, could I suggest that as Katie Graham is on Arts Oberon, that she's probably the best person to make that decision as to whether we should have another delegate or not?
Yeah, I think Fran does an excellent job. But
Yeah. But do we need an additional one or not? think that's it.
I don't think there'd be much point in having.
Okay, that's why I asked the question through the mayor.
So the delegate remains unchanged. Is that the agreement?
Can I just make a caveat on that, is that we sort of haven't asked Fran whether she wants to be that delegate at this point in time. Sorry, I can confirm that Fran has indicated that she's happy to continue on that. Thank you, Sharon.
Ben Chifley Catchment Management Steering Committee. You're currently on it, Councillor McKibben?
I am on it and I'm a member of it. There could be situations where I'd have a conflict of interest is the only issue. If there was an alternate, then if there was an alternate, then
the alternate?
that may
Or do you want
solve that problem
Or do you just want
because
to do it as a primary member?
I'm happy to do it as an alternate. I'm actually a member of that.
you are too, sorry.
Well,
Okay.
So we could both have a conflict.
Well, in that case, I'll go along.
Well,
Well,
Just the two.
just the two. Yeah.
two, and you can attend, you're entitled to attend anyway, so we'll just bring you up and say you've got to attend. Oh, sorry, Mayor.
Through the chair, just in terms of whether there's a voting role, if you both have an interest, then you need to have a delegate in your committee, just so that voting role does not.
Until, I suppose, there's some until some finance flows from Oberon, then there would be some need to have a voting delegate on it. Without any, I don't think there's any money flowing from Oberon at the moment. There would not be a necessity to do it.
Sure.
It's just for information services, but I do agree that there could be a difficult situation. We'd have to look at it at that stage, yeah.
It's just in that instance, I'd say it's a watch and wait.
Because
There was a
as the
contribution.
name suggests, the majority of funding comes from Bathurst to the people on the Campbell's River, and it would feed into Ben Chifley down.
Okay. So Councillor McKibben and Councillor Watt. Black Springs Community Association.
I could be the alternate.
All right. So it'll be Councillor Hayden with an alternate as Councillor McKibben.
And this is an important committee because it has been a little bit, I can say this, a bit disparate. So it's very important we try and unify this community. And it also goes through to another committee which we'll be dealing with, which is the Black Springs Hall. The two committees are overlapped to some degree. But it's very important we get this community working together.
Barricade District Community Association. Andrew?
Yeah.
I'll attend as mayor. Change the names there.
I can sub on that.
Bruce White.
I mean, it's up to you, Mr. Mayor. If you don't have time to attend, it's probably not necessary to attend all the time. Kathy wasn't able to attend obviously all the time, or neither was I on some occasions. So it's just really a question of having someone there.
Well, we'll
And
have
to show support
we'll
because
have my name, your name, and
That's right.
and Councillor White.
yeah.
The Central West New South Wales Joint Organisation, that's pretty much mayor and deputy mayor. And that's just the way it works. That's in the constitution of the Central West JO. Country Mayors Association is the mayor with the general manager, and we're the automatic delegates. Joint and Regional Planning Panel. This is where DAs of significance which may also present a conflict of interest for council done by the Joint and Regional Planning Panel. The panel consists of 3 expert panelists in planning and 2 councillors. And the last one we had come through here, in fact, the councillors were excluded because we would have had a personal, or would have had a conflict of interest. So it was done by the experts. It's important stuff. It needs the ability to read a lot and understand all the issues. Now, currently, Councillor McCarthy is a delegate. I was, but I don't see that I can actually do that anymore. So we need two other councillors. Well, assuming you want to continue with this, Councillor McCarthy.
Give it a go. Yeah, I'm having trouble with the portal, but yeah, anyway.
And another member, Councillor Trimbath, and an alternate. Councillor Hayden. So the New South Wales Public Libraries Association authorised elected representative. Was currently previously done by the mayor, and in the interim until I can sort out other arrangements, unless someone else wants to nominate for that. Yeah. I will continue with that. Oberon Arts Council. Councillor Graham. Opta was Councillor Capel. We have not a volunteer to be the council representative to Opta. All right, Councillor Hayden, and I'm automatically a member of that as well, and the general manager goes at other times.
I can sub on that too, Mr. Mayor, if that
Okay.
suits.
Councillor Watt. Because at the moment, there's, forgive me if I've got this wrong, General Manager, there's a sort of a rotating group between 3 or 4 people who go to that and represent the council's interests.
Yeah, so through the chair, it's just an agreement between the parties that we attend on a rotating roster. Yeah.
Okay.
As in a member of the committee or the council in general?
Council representative at the Opta meetings.
Thank you, Mayor.
The Oberon Timber Complex Community Consultative Committee meetings. Councillor McKinnon,
I wasn't a particularly good attendee at these meetings, so if anyone else is, because they were at 4 o'clock in the afternoon quite often, and Wednesday, which is not a good day for me. Yeah.
so Councillor McKechnie has put his hand up. Anyone else? This is what, once every quarter?
Does this have any interaction? It probably doesn't, with the National Timber Council Association, noting that obviously the board representatives would be on that. Is there any completely different, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
I know what the. Yeah.
So are you nominating Councillor McKibben, or are you?
I don't know that I could really been a good attendee, so I think someone else probably should. I'm happy to put my name down, but you know.
Okay.
Through the chair, we don't need 2.
Yeah, but it's just one or other.
Yeah.
Through the chair, unfortunately or fortunately, everything would then fall back onto the mayor if that person doesn't attend. So welcome to the gig.
It's okay. The O'Connell Valley Community Group. That would probably place you in a position of conflict of interest.
Oh, no, I have to stand back. I gather that.
Okay.
You want to attend, Bruce? You're O'Connell, was it?
Yes,
So both Councillor Watt and Councillor Trimbath. All right, the Rural Fire Service Chipley Zone Liaison Committee, currently Councillor McCarthy and Gibbons.
I again wasn't a good attendee on this, so anyone else I think would be better attendee than me, because I do have meetings at sort of 9:30 and the morning, etc. So if anyone else can attend, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Any other volunteers? You're.
Clive does a great job, I have to
Yeah,
say.
I realise that. So that, councillor McCarthy.
Do you want an alternate, Clive?
Katie said she-
Katie, oh,
No,
sorry.
I didn't see that quiet nod of your head.
That's all right.
And the other Macquarie County Council.
Yes, I'll stand on that again.
All right, councillor McKibben, and we need one other councillor for that.
I would suggest, Councillor Watt might be appropriate due to he travelling around all the council areas involved. He probably gets a better appreciation of weeds and where they exist than the rest of us, really. If he's happy to do it.
All right,
I know for
councillor
I can.
McKibben and councillor Watt. So that's all done, so it's,
So through the chair, there is another committee that council sits on that we probably should put in place, which is the Forestry Hub. It is a committee that was formulated through the federal government, and it's the mayor and the general manager as the delegate to the mayor sit on that committee as well. So just for interest. It'll fall from the mayor to the deputy mayor if the mayor can't make it.
I think this committee is going to have, well, I think council, it's going to have a significant impact on the council area, so we need to know what's happening there. What's happening, yep, positively and some negatively, both.
so that will now appear in the minutes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Have a mover and a seconder, and you have no objection, I believe, so we'll just put the.
So I will now put the recommendation, which is that council appoint as delegates to the external organisations for the following 2 years. All in favour? Unanimous? All right, item 1303, and the recommendation is that the delegations to the general manager be endorsed by council as presented. Gentlemen, would you like to provide some comment?
Through the chair,
Oh, sorry.
in terms of your function, council look after the strategic operations and general manager look after the operations of the council. This is the delegation, which is a standard instrument across all councils in terms of council providing the general manager those delegations to do his role or her role.
I have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Watt. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Watt.
Well, I think it's a very standard way of operating, and I'm happy to endorse it.
Thank you. Councillor Hayden.
It's very standard. And I've read through and yes.
Any other observations or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour, say aye. Against? Passed. All right, item 1304, disclosures, returns disclosing interest and related parties disclosure. Recommendation in 2 parts. The council note the requirement to lodge a return disclosing interests of councillors and designated persons, and council note the requirement to lodge a related party disclosure for newly elected councillors. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor McKibben and Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is obviously a requirement of the Local Government Act, and we need to do it in both these areas. I just note for purposes of the new councillors coming in, especially in relation to related party disclosure, it is not absolutely clear at all stages what a related party disclosure is. So you need to read that carefully. Some people read it as relatives, cousins. Some people read it as joint family. So it is not particularly clear on how it's worded, and there have been different interpretations. Probably from a safety purposes, maybe read it wider, but then, you know, it can cause some issues there. As we all know, in the parliamentary sphere, in both federal and state in particular, and in some councils, people have been picked up on not having returned, or disclosed their interests correctly. So, you know, it has to be done correctly. And if during the course of a term you suddenly realise you failed to disclose something, it can always be amended and submitted through the show. But it is important. So don't take it lightly. And the related party area in particular, I found difficult. I know a number of other council areas that's found difficult. So I think the forms will be sent out by Sharon, won't they, to councillors to fill out, so that makes it easy. And I think she's going to send Word ones so that you can just fill them that type of information, which makes it easier online. But they do need to be done. They do need to be done on time.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just supporting Councillor McKibben's words. Just a word of caution there, when you read the disclosure of interest, and you also read the conflict of interest sections of the handbooks, they do overlap a little bit, and sometimes you can make a disclosure that accidentally gives you a conflict of interest. But when you make the disclosure, you can add to it and alter it, or you can add to interests that you're disclosing later, but you can't alter an existing one the way I read it. So once you've made one disclosure, it's binding, not just for the term of this council, but the term of the next council and following councils. So you need to be clear. And it is a bit confusing, but just a word of caution there. And I also understand from reading it that, again, that existing councillors, if there's no change, or sorry, re-elected councillors, if there's been no change in their circumstances, don't have to fill in another disclosure. That's the way I read it.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yep. Okay, no problem. Second, Councillor McKibben.
All right, put the motion. All those in favour?
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just continuing from what Councillor McKibben and McKechnie said, I also struggled with the related parties disclosure about just how far down the list of relatives you might have to list, even though you've never met them and they, you know, live thousands of k's away, and yeah, just where to draw that line. Is it possible to get any further guidance, or do we need to review and amend the council policy to make that a bit clearer, or how can we make sure we do it correctly without going overboard?
It's a bit like conflict of interest. If you've got relatives who are living in Western Australia and are not likely to have anything to do with council, that's not a disclosure. If they're living in Bathurst and they might be having something to do with council, that is disclosure. And that's about as clear as we can really make it at this stage.
So for instance, if I could use an example, maybe that's do you know David and Penny McKibben are relatives of mine at Stratford? The council occasionally buys trees from Stratford trees, so I list those as a related party. But if I've got relatives in Sydney, I haven't listed them, so it's a bit like Councillor Cullen was saying. I'm just using an example because that helps to crystallise it.
That's right. If you think,
Through the chair, just to
Yeah.
the related parties, there is an emphasis on each individual councillor
Yeah.
to make that decision, which is why there is confusion out there. The 27th of January is going to be very important in that, because the facilitator will run through what that is and will give you more information on what that is. So look, I would recommend not filling it in until after the 27th, when you've had that training and get a little bit more comfort around that. At the end of the day, it's up to each individual councillor to determine whether they are or are not a related party. I'm sorry, I haven't made it any clearer for you, but
That's why it's
at the end of the
confusing,
day,
that's
it's
why
up
it's
to you. It's not up to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
So you can't sit there and say, oh, the general manager told me that I did it. It's up to each individual council to do that. It's the same with your disclosures. But the 27th will be very important to ask those questions to get comfort around that for your councils.
Okay, any other questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. All right, boundary realignment, item 1305, boundary realignment and land purchase, Bryan Road, Oberon. Recommendation is in three parts: that council provide its approval to close lot 10 brackets DP 1269542 close brackets as a public road by notice to be published in the New South Wales Gazette. 2, upon closure of lot 10 brackets DP 1269542 close brackets be classified operational land. And 3, council approved to transfer lot 10 brackets DP 1269542 close brackets to the owners of lot 20 brackets DP 860460 close brackets in consideration of receiving the agreed price. I have a mover and a seconder, Councillor McKibben and Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important that the mover and seconder on this should be from the former council term because of the history that goes behind this. There is quite a history about it, as you will see from the commentary below. But I'm on the basis of what's gone before and from the commentary history and what we know, I'm very happy to move the recommendation in three parts.
Councillor McCarthy.
It's pretty straightforward and it's a good outcome. Someone's got off the backside and finalised something like this and not allowed it to dwell on for years and years. So it's a good result.
Any other questions? I put the motion. All in favour? Passed unanimously. All right, 1306, audited 2020-21 financial statements. Recommendation is that council place the audited 2020-21 financial statements on public display for 28 days from the 30th of December 2021.
I have a question.
Mover and a seconder, please.
Move.
Councillor McKibben and McKigney. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you. I respect there's a question over there, but I'll move it first. These have been through intense investigation in the previous council term, and they have gone obviously to the auditors for the audit. I'm happy that the audited financial statements give a fair account of the council's financial situation for 2021.
Yeah, nothing further to add in regards to the motion, but I might have some questions for the financial director, which I can give to him later. It doesn't have to be clarified at the meeting.
Through the chair, this is simply to allow us to place these audited financials on public exhibition. As the report indicates, our auditors will be coming back in February and councillors can critique that at that point in time should they require.
Councillor Hayden, you have a question?
My question was, I was just going through figures and noticed that there's an amount that doesn't add up. On page 32, 69. Under the C1-3. Total cash. 25,839. It only adds up to 24,944. There's a difference of 895.
Sorry, could you just repeat that? Councillor?
Sorry.
Sorry, would you mind repeating that?
There's a difference of 895 where it says total cash and equivalents and investments, if we add up the 15,327 and the 9,617, it only comes to 24944, and there's nothing to state where the 895's gone.
Yeah. Ask a question. We just take it on notice and ask that question, it'll be finalised. And information provided back to you.
Okay.
Okay, put the motion, all in favour? Against? Unanimous. All right, village 1307 village fund project allocations. That Oberon recommendation in two parts. That Oberon Council approved the request from Barricade District Community Association to draw down $3,200 from the Barricade Village Fund allocation to support works at the Barricade Hall. And two, the Oberon Council approved the request from the Black Springs Community Association to draw down $15,570 from the Black Springs Village Fund allocation to support work at the Black Springs Hall. Do I have a mover and seconder, Councillor McKibben and Councillor Hayden? Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got some knowledge of both of these projects. First one, the Barricade District Community Association, unfortunately, after a considerable amount of grant funds spent at that hall, termites were actually located in the hall, and I was present when they were located. And the $3,200 was for, in the commentary you'll see in the first paragraph, it was Clare Civil Engineers to carry out a structural investigation of the hall to see what damage had been caused and how extensive the damage was. And obviously the next one is for Delta Force Pest Control to put a treatment program in place for the termites. So that was rather an urgent need. The hall will also, in going forward, the community will have to find funds to actually do the structural repair to the hall's floor, which includes damage to joists in particular. Some of the bearers are okay, but most of the bearers are, I think, okay, but the joists. So we need to keep that in mind moving ahead, and how we can help them or assist them. In relation to the Black Springs Hall, the Black Springs Hall Committee came up with a list of issues moving forward that needed to be undertaken on the hall. And the first list was the critical issues, which meant that the hall wasn't really safe enough to be used. Most of those involved electrical works, and the $15,560 is to go to those electrical works, including an upgrade of the board, which is commented on in the second last paragraph of the on page 37. Obviously, these halls are crucial for those small communities in our villages in as a centre, and in particular in relation to the Black Springs Hall. We're hopeful that once some works are done, we can actually increase the use of that hall. And I think as a council, we should be also promoting the use of these halls by groups, whether in Oberon or from surrounding areas, to use the halls so that we can actually generate a bit of revenue once we've done all of this. So I know that's an aside, but it's important that we look to the future on those. So I am very happy to recommend that these funds, which are allocated by council to these village associations each year, about, I think it's currently 5,000 a year, be used for these purposes. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with what Councillor McKibben has said. I've also been in attendance down at the Barricade Hall and was there when they discovered the termites and the damage that's occurred there, and it will be much more needed to be upgraded. And with Black Springs, yes, I'm quite aware of the electricity that needs to be upgraded and get the halls workable back to how communities used to have them, and get them in use again. So yes.
Councillor Hayes. Put the recommendation, all in favour? Harry, sorry, did you have something?
Yeah, I want to talk on the Black Springs one. Anyway, let it go.
My apologies, Councillor McCarthy. There are no reports of information or urgent business. There is no closed session or confidential reports. So I will close the meeting at 11:55, and the next meeting is at on the 15th of February 2022 at 5:30 at the council chambers. Thank you, gallery, and thank you to councillors new and old.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Down the